And welcome back, students. We are going to continue our discussion about pixel art. Specifically today, I want to take time to take a step back and discuss keyboard shortcuts. Now, I have a nice list here of keyboard shortcuts, and if you're looking at this list here in Photoshop, you'll see that many of these tools are tools that we have already discussed, or keyboard pieces that you might already know about. Now, this is not a full comprehensive list of keyboard shortcuts. These are more just some of the more common ones that you might encounter. Obviously, top of the list, Control-Z, undo, is a very helpful one. It lets us simply undo an action. So, for example, if I use this gradient that we had from last time, and I just to say, let's grab the pencil tool, for example, and just draw a line through it. And we say, I don't really want that to be there. You can just use Control-Z to undo it. The next thing, of course, is the eraser tool. And of course, we already discussed how the eraser tool works. So if I switch this over to the eraser, I can click and drag over that. Now, the one thing you do have to be careful about is that eraser tool will erase all pixels on that layer. So as you notice, it did take that piece out there as well as the mark that I did. So just something to keep in mind. Now, the marquee tool, remember, that is a selection tool, so a rectangular marquee. If I wanted to make a rectangular selection and then work with inside of this selection, this is a great tool to be able to use that. And we'll see this tool in use more as we dive further into the material. The gradient tool we just talked about last time. It allowed us to make a gradient. So if, for example, I go to gradients and I just draw my line with it, you can see, of course, I had changed the gradient to a red option. And so now I have more of a reddish hued gradient versus the orange one that we had previously. Then we have the brush tool. So if I use the brush tool, remember that is here under pencil. And of course I can use the keyboard shortcuts for any of these here. Now, when I paint with that, you see it will paint on. And remember, the brush tool, of course, is using the fade effect around it. Whereas if I want something a little more rigid, I would keep that on the pencil tool, all right, which is what we, of course, are using right now. The shape tool is really handy for putting things like shapes down. By default, you'll see that it is rectangular. They got ellipse, triangle, polygon, line, even customs. So if I leave it on rectangular, for example, and I click and drag, it will draw a rectangle, in this case with a black fill, because that's the color that's currently in the fill. If I want to change that, of course, I can use different colors. So for example, if I use fill red, you can see now I have a red filled rectangle with a black stroke. Okay? Or if I want to change the stroke, I can click that too. Let's make that a blue one. So now I have a blue stroke around my red rectangle. Then, of course, we have the move tool. So if I hit V, that's the move tool right up here. That allows me to click and drag something. So for example, I can grab my rectangle now. I can move that around freely. Maybe I want to leave it there in the corner. The zoom tool I've already discussed is right here. It allows us to, we can either click to zoom in, or we can click and drag to zoom in and zoom out. And if I hold down Alt, it becomes a minus. So it does the same thing, except it reverses the direction. And of course, if I use Control-0, that allows me to reset it to the center of my screen. All right, the last few things, of course, are make smaller, make bigger, which is the angle, the brackets, which are right in your keyboard. And that is most common, for example, when I'm on the pencil tool, all right, and I maybe want to make this bigger. So I want to select more than just the 1 pixel by default, for example. I can come in and be able to do that. All right, and that's going to wrap up this real quick lesson on keyboard shortcuts. Like I said, this is not a comprehensive list, but it is a list of some of the more common ones that you may run into.